With the Shavuot coming up, I thought we'd come back to a theme, but we want to deal with it in an entirely different way because everybody always tells the story about Ruth. And there is a fascinating story, actually, possibly even more interesting than the story of Ruth, about the other daughter-in-law. What happened to Orpah? Is there an after story about her? Do we know anything about what happened when she walked away from her mother-in-law? The answer is that we do, and it's dealt with in the Midrash, it's dealt with in the Talmud, and it's dealt with in the Midrashim, and it has some rather extraordinary outcomes, which has some very profound implications as it happens, that I hope we'll be able to explicate in the course of this shiur. We're going to start with the first chapter of the book of Ruth, which we're going to run through pretty quickly, just to remind ourselves of what the story looks like, and some of the, we'll come back to it because it has some very significant phrases. But let's look at the start of the story, and then we'll move on to other sources as well. So I'm going to share the screen with a document. And it's going to be this one here, where I have the book of Ruth up in front of us. And I'll read through it very quickly. I'm going to read the Hebrew. You can read the English at the same time if you're not familiar with the Hebrew. Vayhi b'mei shefot hashvatim vayhi ra'av ba'aretz v'yelech ish mebeit lechem Yehuda lagur b'stei Moav hu v'ishto u'shnei vanav. V'shem ha'ish Elimelech v'shem ishto Naami v'shem shnei vanav Machlon v'chilion Efratim mebeit lechem Yehuda v'yavo'u sdei Moav v'hi v'yusham. So they came to Moab. V'yamat Elimelech ish Naami v'tishaer hi u'shnei vaneha. So he dies, and she's left with the two sons. Yisalehem nashim Moaviyot. They married two Moabite women. Shem ha'achat Orpah, v'shem ha'shanit Ruth. Yeshu sham ke'eser shanim, and they lived there for 10 years. Not clear at the moment as to whether these girls actually converted to Judaism or not. They're marrying Jewish boys. They're coming from a very prominent family. Elimelech is a big dude. Naomi is a very, very fine woman. They're just going to allow their kids to get married without any conversion. It's not clear, but it will become very significant for us as well. At any rate, the story continues. They also die. Machlon v'chilion. She's left with her two sons and with her husband. She gets up with her daughters-in-law, v'tashav mistei Moav, ki shema'a b'stei Moav, ki fakad Adonai et hamo latet lehem lechem, that there is now food that's going to be available to them when she goes back home again. But tetzem min hamakom asher hayata shama, and so she leaves the place where they were. Ushtei chaloteha ima, she has her two daughters-in-law with her. V'telachna b'derech lashuv al eretz Yehuda, they're on the way back. They're on the road back to Judah, which of course is Israel. Let each one of you go back to your mother's home. Ya'as Adonai imachem chesed, may God do kindly to you, kasher asitem et hametim ve'imadi, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. They were good daughters-in-law. They were loving. They were very supportive. They did very well for their husbands. They did very well for Naomi as well. But turn back, nevertheless. And may the Lord grant yitain Adonai lachem mitzena menucha isha beit isha v'tishak lehen. And so she kisses them farewell. And both of them, significantly, v'tisiena kolan v'tivkena, and both of them lift their voices and they weep. This is a difficult moment. And they both of them say, no, we're going to return with you to your people. And so Naomi says to them, no, shovna v'notai, Turn back, my daughters. Lama telachnemi. Why do you want to come with me? Odli vanim b'me'ai. Do I still have children in my womb? Are you lachem lanashim who could be husbands for you? Shovna v'nechai lachen ki zakanti miyot leish. I'm too old to have any more, to have a husband anymore. Ki amarti yesh li tikva. Do I have any hope? Gamayiti halayla leish. Even if tonight I had another husband, the gami aladati vanim, would I still have children? There's nothing I can do for you anymore. I can't support you. I can't give you sons. We're in a patrilineal society. It's the men who look after the women. Should you wait for them to grow up? Should you on their account, debar yourselves from marriage? No, no, my daughters. My lot is far more bitter than yours, for the hand of the Lord has struck against me. But you have a future, and you have to look out for yourselves. But Yisena Kolan, once again, a second time, both of them cry, they weep. But Tivkena Od, and they broke into weeping again. But Yisena Kolan, they lifted their voices, but Tivkena Od, and again they cry and they weep. But Tishak Arpa Lachamota, and Arpa, the first one, not Ruth, but Arpa is the first one to kiss her mother-in-law. Ruth Davkaba, and Ruth cleaves to her. So Arpa kisses her mother-in-law, and Ruth cleaves to her mother-in-law. These are the key phrases that we're going to be exploring today. And we'll come back to them again later on. So she said, see, your sister-in-law has returned to her people and her gods. Go and follow your sister-in-law. That's what she says to Ruth. So, the broken weeping again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law farewell. Okay, so she turns around to Ruth and says, you see what your sister-in-law has done? Follow her as well. Go follow your sister-in-law. Of course, very famously, Ruth says, no way, Jose. Tome Ruth, Al tivka bi la azveich, do not urge me to leave you, la shuv mecharayich, to leave you behind, ki elashet elchi, because wherever you go, elech, I will go. Vasher talini, and whether you sleep and lodge, alin, I will sleep. Amech ami, your people are my people. Velahayich Elohai, your God is my God. Very famous words. Where you die, I will die. Vasher tamuti amut, v'sham ekaver, and that is where I'll be buried. Ko yaseh Adonai li v'cho Yosef ki hamavet yafrid beini v'necha. Thus and more may the Lord do to me anything he wants. But I can tell you one thing, only death is going to part me from you. And when Naomi saw how determined was she to go with her, she ceased to argue with her. And the two went until they reached Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole city is buzzing with excitement. Can this be Naomi? She doesn't look quite the same. She's had hard times. She's wrinkled, she's thin, she's emaciated, she is starving. She is a different woman altogether. Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. Call me embittered, for God has made my lot very bitter. I went away full and the Lord has brought me back empty. How can you call me Naomi? The Lord has dealt harshly with me. God has brought misfortune on me. And therefore, no, Naomi returned from the country of Moab. She returned with her daughter-in-law, Ruth the Moabite. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. And as we all know, the story works out beautifully. And ultimately, it leads to a descendant of Ruth the Moabitess being King David, very controversially, because there's always a blemish on his heritage as a Moabite. Well, the Babylonian Talmud picks up on the story about this question of what does it mean when Naomi said that Ruth was determined to go with her? What did she see? So she stopped speaking to her, it says. She stopped speaking to her. What was she saying? And so the Talmud wants to elaborate what the conversation was between them. Naomi said to her, you know what? We Jews, we're not allowed to be in Yichud. You're not allowed to be alone with any other man. That's a really hard thing, you know. It changes the whole way in which you interact in society. You've always got to watch your yard. You can't get into a lift, by the way, if there's another man in it. You know, is that the kind of life you want to lead? She says to her, wherever you're going to live, I'm going to live. She said, have you heard about this thing called Shabbat? Shabbat's a big, heavy number. You know, you can't even walk 2,000 amot outside of your city. There's all kinds of limitations. He hasn't even started talking to her about Shabbos kettle and about putting the lights on before Yom Tov and the whole business. She says to him, wherever you go, I will go. I'm up for it. I'm up for Shabbos. You know, you only have 7 commandments that you have to keep. 7 commandments. We have 613 commandments. It's a really heavy duty kind of life. You really don't want this. You don't need this in your life. Your people will be my people. You know that the prevalent culture around over here is to serve idols. We don't do that. It's very hard to be countercultural. Your God is my God. You know, our courts mete out 4 methods of capital punishment. Doesn't matter where you die, I will die. And you know, there's different kinds of graves assigned by the court. Where you're going to be buried, that's where I'm going to be buried. Immediately she saw that she was determined to go with her, and so she stopped speaking to her. So the Talmud has given a little bit of color to the story. And by the way, on the basis of this piece of Talmud, one has to presume, in fact, that she was not Jewish. Because this is the story that you are subsequently, in other generations, we learn that when a person wants to convert, you have to read them the riot act. You have to tell them what they're in for. You have to be very clear to them, you need this in your life. You can be a perfectly good person without being Jewish. But there are other traditions which suggest that of course, they must have been converted. But there was an opt-out clause at this point in time, at least for Ruth, which she did not wish to avail herself of. And that's the story. So we're going to stop sharing this particular screen, and we're going to turn to Talmud Sotah 42b, where they talk about an entirely different story, which, by the way, is equally well known. And I'll share screen again. As you see, 42b on the second page, and we turn to the story of Goliath, of all people. And the verse says, this is David and Goliath, the famous story of David and Goliath. And the verse says, and the Philistine, that's Goliath, drew near morning and evening. And Rabbi Yochanan says, he did this specifically in order. Why the morning and the evening? What's the Talmud teaching us over here? No, it's the morning and the evening because he did this to prevent them from saying the Shema in the morning and the evening. Can you get this into your head? Goliath, this great big, forgive me for saying it, this great big goy, has this in his head. I'm going to stop them saying Shema, okay? That's why I'm going to go and stand there in the morning and the evening. Go and figure it out. And Goliath presented himself for 40 days, it says in Samuel as well. And Rabbi Yochanan says, no, these 40 days, these were the 40 days which corresponded to the 40 days during which the Torah was given. And Goliath wanted to do away with the Torah. In other words, straight away, the Talmud wants to tell us that this dude, Goliath, is not just out there for a bit of a rumble in the jungle, in the jungle. He has an agenda. He is anti-Judaism. He wishes to stop the Jews from the fundamental biblical command of reciting the Shema in the morning and evening, and he wants to do away with the entire Torah as symbolized by the 40 days during which time Moses was on the mountain. 40 days. Extraordinary, out of nowhere. We move down a little bit. What's the best way to insult a person? Certainly an Arab. The best way to insult an Arab is by insulting his mother. If you want to really insult an Arab, tell him that he's the son of a whore. And funny enough, that's exactly what the Talmud does now. The verse recounts that his name was Goliath of Gat. Gat, of course, was one of the Philistine cities. Rav Yosef taught, this is because everybody would thresh his mother. Gat is a threshing field. That's where the threshing was done. That's what the name means. Would thresh his mother by cohabiting with her, like people do in a wine press, where everyone tramples. His mother was trampled on, she was a whore. But we read according to the Masoretic text, okay. And we read according to the Masoretic text that he came from amongst the ranks of the Ma'archot, of the Philistines. What is meant by the term Ma'arot? Rabbi Yosef said the word is related to He'era, which is our polite word in the Talmud for penetration, sexual penetration. Meaning to say that everyone penetrated her, everyone engaged in sexual intercourse with his mother. So Goliath's mother apparently wasn't such an ay person. She was, she had relations with many, many men. And this is a terrible insult to Goliath. This is the man who wishes to undermine Judaism, but his own lineage is very suspect. Hang on a second. Who is his mother? Here comes the big surprise. It is written that Goliath's mother in the second book of Samuel 21:16, her name was Harapha. And another place it was written her name was Orpah. Rav and Shmuel, and the Gemara says later on that's the same woman. And then the name has meaning. Rav and Shmuel engaged in a dispute concerning the matter. One of them said her name was Harapha. And why was she called therefore by the name Orpah? Because everyone came to her, sorry folks, this is Talmud, everybody came to her from behind, in other words, sodomized her. Okay. And one of them said her name was Orpah, so therefore why was she called Harapha? Because everyone threshed her like groats, engaged in sexual intercourse with her. And so it says the word means groats, because that's what you do with groats, you thresh them. And the women took and spread the covering of the well's mouth, and they strewed groats thereon. And if you wish, you can say from here that though you should crush a fool in a mortar with a pestle among groats, in other words, Harapha means pounding, 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 pounding. And that is a word, an expression over here for the form of intercourse that she had. So she was sodomized from behind. She engaged in relationships in the front. She had all of these men, etc., etc. Apparently, this Orpah, who turns out, it seems, to be our Orpah, the one who we last left kissing her mother-in-law, weeping and walking away, she has more than one son. The Gemara continues its discussion of the battle of David and Goliath. These four were born to Harapha in Gat, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. What is the name of the four siblings who are mentioned over here? Rav Chisda says, Saf, Madon, Goliath, and Ishbi in Nob, four sons. And it says they fell into the hands of David and his servants. Why did these people fall into the hands of David? Why was he destined to be the one to slay Goliath and his three brothers, as it turns out? Watch this. It is because of the acts of their forefathers, as it is written, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, and Ruth cleaved to her. Rav Yitzhak says, the Holy One, blessed be he, said, the children of the one who kissed, referring to the four giants descended from Orpah, will come and fall into the hand of the children of the one who cleaved, referring to David, who descended from Ruth. A very important phrase over here in the Aramaic, Yavo'u b'nei hanushuka Vayiplu biyad b'nei hadvuka. It's beautiful. The language is beautiful. Neshuka is the one who kissed. Dvuka is the one who cleaved. That takes us back to the language which I pointed out to you as the important phrase which we looked at in the first chapter of the book of Ruth. One kissed, the other cleaved. And suddenly, out of this mysterious piece of Talmud, we suddenly discover that these two protagonists are not strangers. If their mothers or maternal ancestors were in fact converted, not only are they not strangers, but they're cousins. How extraordinary. It puts the whole story of David and Goliath into an entirely different light. And how did this happen? What happened to Orpah that suddenly she's produced these children and she's become a whore? It's all very mysterious. And we want to try and get to the bottom of it and find out really what it's about. That's as far as we're going to go in the Talmud, because that's what deals mainly with this passage over here. And I'm going to stop the share and come back to the other set of notes that I showed you a few moments ago, and some of the stuff which I've copied down at the bottom of the passages where we left off. So forgive me for a moment, and we're back over here. And you're still with me. We're going to share screen again, and we're going to come back to the share over here. And we're going to look a little bit further down at some midrashim. The Midrash Rabbi and Ruth also asks the question why she's called Arpa. Well, we have found a very unflattering explanation in the Talmud, which we'll see in the Midrash as well. But here is another explanation from the Talmud. Oref, of course, means neck. She was called Arpa because she turned her back, the back of her neck, on her mother-in-law. And the second one was called Ruth because she saw and appreciated the words of her mother-in-law, because the word Ruth is connected with the word Ra'ata, she saw. One turned her back, the other one saw. What did she see? And what did she turn her back on? We'll answer that in a moment. We've just seen over here, quote, and I'm just re-quoting it again from the Talmud. Why was she called Orpah? It's because everyone came at her from behind, they sodomized her. Why was she called Harafa? Because everybody threshed her like groats, engaged in sexual intercourse with her. The Midrash Rabbi tells us something astonishing. This wasn't just a whore. She was a super whore. She was the mother of all prostitutes. The night that Orpah left her mother-in-law, Naomi, she was physically intimate with 100 men. And they got mixed up in her 100 male reproductive organs. And she produces these 4 giants. You have to admit that the Talmud and the Midrash have a real sense of humor, okay? Because none of this makes any sense at all. Why would Orpah do something like that? What happened to her? Is there a backstory here? Is there something that we're missing? Is there a connecting link here between this devoted daughter-in-law who's having such difficulty leaving her mother-in-law and her bizarre behavior that very night? I did tell you that this is 18 rated, so anybody's feeling really uncomfortable, I'll excuse you from the Zoom call and can find the answers from someone else. I want to come back before we start pulling all of this together and trying to make some sense of it. I want to come back to what we learned in the Talmud, in which we said that Goliath stood there morning and night because he wanted to He wanted to prevent the Jewish people from being able to say the Shema twice a day, that he stood there brazenly every day challenging them for 40 days to correspond to the 40 days that Moses was on Sinai, as if to say, I am going to undermine your entire Torah. And look at some of the Midrashim, which take us a bit beyond this over here. Midrash Rabbi Ruth, Rabbi Barachia said, in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, we're not finished with the 40s yet. There's more 40s. Orpah followed her mother-in-law 40 steps. As a result, her son received 40 days. The Philistines approached for 40 days in the morning and in the evening, we learned. Rava taught, as a reward for the 4 tears that Orpah shed in sadness over her mother-in-law, she merited the 4 mighty warriors who descended from her. As it is said, and they lifted up their voice and they wept again. So we understand 4 times. The 4 who we've already seen in the Talmud were Saf, Madon, Goliath, and Ishbi and Nov. So here you have something very strange. You would have imagined that if Orpah follows her mother-in-law for 40 steps, and if she sheds 4 tears, she should be rewarded for this in some positive way. Instead, we discover that the result of this action, this good action, this beautiful action of accompanying her mother-in-law for 40 steps, she merits that her son stands up and curses the Jewish people for 40 days. In the merit of the tears that she shed, she has 4 mighty warriors, all of whom are Sonei Israel, who hate Israel and who are slain by David. Now, I ask you this question, is that Yiddish Nachas? Is that what you'd expect as a reward for something which is beautiful? It is a bizarre connection that is being made in the Midrash between Orpah and her son Goliath and descendants. Finally, I'm going to show you one little piece from the Maharal of Prague. Rabbi Yehuda Loew ben Betzalel, who was the 15th century, died in 1609. Of course, he is the famous Maharal of Prague because we know him because he's the one who fashioned the golem, the one which sits up in the loft in the Altonoy Shul in Prague to this very day, and where you're not allowed to go up and see it. He was a very, very profound mystic. He's the forerunner, by the way, of Chassidut, the Baal Shem Tov, etc. All of them drew upon his very profound teachings. And he has the most enigmatic little commentary, which actually is the key to unlocking all of these conundrums that we've been discussing for the last half an hour or so. He says as follows. He comments on Sota 42b, the sons of the one who kissed Orpah came so close to being connected, yet they rejected it. They came close to being connected, and yet they rejected it. And then he says, I don't expect anybody to understand this for the moment, but don't worry because we're going to try and explain it. If Orpah had never kissed, then you could never say that she was worthy to be connected because there was no rejection. But when she kissed, she was worthy of being connected because kissing is a form of joining, and yet she separated. Therefore, the sons of the one who kissed will fall into the hands of the one who cleaved, because they're opposites, and they have to fight to the death, and they have to defeat each other. Yava'u b'nei hanashuka, vayiplu b'yad b'nei haduvuka. Anybody who reads this has a sense that he is trying to communicate to us something very profound over here, but not one that we can actually get our fingers on. What is he saying? That because they kissed, because she kissed, she became connected, and there wasn't any rejection. And as a result of that, something has to happen one generation down the line, and there are antagonists who have to fight to the death. Let me try and put all of this into some kind of context. I want to come back to what happened between Orpah and her mother. Who were these girls? They were girls who came presumably out of nowhere, out of a Moabite culture, and they come into a Jewish family. I don't know what Judaism looked like at that time. Probably somewhat different to the way it is in the Judaism which we practice. These are still the early days, but there must have been a lot that would be no different to who we are now. They must have come into an immensely warm, loving family. It was a well-to-do family. They would certainly have been keeping Shabbat. They would certainly have been keeping kosher. They would certainly have been expressing a home full of Jewish values. And then there is this moment of separation. And for one of the girls, Ruth, she's seen all of this, and she is not prepared to give it up. It's too important for her in her life. Despite everything that it might entail in the future, she has seen a belief system, a way of life, a warmth that is too important for her to lose. And she's prepared to commit to it. Orpah doesn't just turn her back on it. The whole sense of this passage here that we looked at is one of immense conflict, ambivalence, uncertainty. Which way shall I turn? She walks 40 steps with her mother-in-law. And for every one of those 40 steps, she's debating, which way, which way, which way? I'm tugged to this family. I'm tugged to this woman. I've seen dignity in her. I've seen a quality of life over here that is very, very beautiful. It is so immensely different to everything else that is around in this pagan environment, this licentious environment, this environment which has no morals, in which and you can do anything you like in your life. And here is an ordered, structured, chaste environment of beautiful relationships. You were good to my boys. You were good to me. There was a loving family. But it's really hard for her. She wants to kiss. She wants to hold tight. She wants to weep. But in the end, she is so profoundly and deeply conflicted that she just can't go ahead with it. And she has to turn her back on everything that she has devoted the years of her life to in her marriage to her dead husband. So what happens to her? What happens to her that night? The answer is the conflict is so profound and so deep that she becomes unhinged. She just throws it all overboard. She simply throws herself mindlessly, stupidly into a life and night when everything is thrown away. This is psychological trauma of the first order. She goes from the one extreme to the other. She loses her own sense of self. She's nothing. She has no more identity. She allows herself to be threshed like groats, like wheat, sodomized from behind. A total, absolute loss of any dignity whatsoever. She's thrown her life away because she can't bear the conflict. And that's what happens sometimes to people when they have to face these crises in their lives. Some manage them, and others go to the opposite extreme. And that, by the way, is why you find people who turn to drugs, who turn to alcohol, who turn to addictions, the people who can't cope with the pressures of their lives, who have to face such incredibly difficult circumstances. They just throw everything away. They try to lose themselves completely. Maybe I'll forget. Maybe the pain will go away. And she throws herself back into the life of that society around her. And then she has a son, 4 sons, as it happens. One of them is Goliath. He's a giant. He's a Philistine. He's joined the Philistines. Maybe the dad was a Philistine. The funny thing is this. We've seen this, of course, with Holocaust survivors. The traumas of one generation pass down to the next. The kids have to carry all the rubbish that the parents have lived through. They are not able to walk away from it. It's passed on, not in the genes, but almost by osmosis. This kid, whoever he is Goliath, we know nothing about his backstory, but he is damaged goods from the day in which he is born. Can you imagine having a mum like that? And he blames what happened to his mum. He blames the death of her husband, the circumstances in which she walked away. Maybe he blames the mother-in-law. Whatever it is, this guy has a chip on his shoulder against Judaism. He hates Jews. And he hates Jews because he is bound up with them. He can't escape the story. He is part of the story. This is what the Maharal of Prague is saying. She kissed, and therefore she became connected. If she had not been connected, it would have been so much easier. If she had just walked away without conflict, everything would be fine. Okay, I don't buy into this, I've got something else. But no, she is living both together. She can't get rid of it. She can't get it out of her system. And her son becomes an enemy for that reason, because he can't get it out of his system. What we're learning here is a profound insight from the Maharal of Prague. We understand for the first time self-hating Jews. Do you know why they hate? Because they can't let go of it. Because they can't be separate. Because it is part of them. Because they say, I don't want it, but I have it. And I wish I didn't have it, but I can't kick the habit. I can't get out of it. I'm connected. I'm part of it. Here is the fundamental problem. That if you only go halfway in life, if it's only the kiss and not the embrace, if it's not Ruth who is a devuka, she goes for the whole thing. She is prepared to embrace it, not just her mother-in-law, but everything that that lifestyle stands for. She has no conflict. She's crossed the bridge. She's made a commitment. She is 100% there. She's prepared to face the difficulties because she is whole inside. She knows who she is, what she wants to be. She has an identity. And her sister-in-law has no identity. She is confused and split. And she is forever somewhere connected and disconnected at the same time. And what a story this is for every human being, of what it means in our lives to get caught somewhere in the middle, where we can't move one way or the other, where we want both and instead of either or, where we have to somehow juggle the worlds in which we live. I want this secular world around me over here. I want it so badly. I want to be part of it, but I also want Judaism, and I don't know how to reconcile the two. And for many people, this causes enormous anger and rejection. So I think that the story of Orpah is actually, in many respects, a more relevant story for our times than the story of Ruth. Ruth, we understand. Ruth is the story of the convert who comes to Judaism, sees a beautiful form of life and wants to be part of it. Ruth is the story of the Baal Teshuvah, who comes from a non-observant background and makes a wholehearted commitment to enter into a consistent, coherent life of Judaism. And Orpah are a lot of our kids struggling with identity, struggling to find themselves in the world as Jews, angry about Israel, angry about Jewish practice, angry about whatever it is. And why they're angry? Because they have neshika, because they're connected. If you're on the outside, if you're just a very nice non-Jewish person, you get on with your life. You don't have these conflicts. That would be rejection that the Mara is talking about. But if you live somewhere in this conflicted middle position of neshika without devuka, then we have a generational problem. And that is the story of Orpah.